Hi, my name is Gianna Bruce. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Connecticut, born and raised. I'm one of the founders here at TNA, and I'm here to talk about my story on the podcast, just to get everybody to know me a little bit better, know my story, and why I created this whole program. So, growing up, I had pretty much a normal childhood, like everybody else had. A kid that played outside, played with friends, stuff like that. I was just like a normal kid, and yeah, pretty much. And growing up, I didn't really see anything happen. It's like, because I was young, but once everything started like becoming a clear picture to me was probably when I was around 9 or 8. So to go a little back, I lived in a house with my grandmother, my uncle, and my mom at the time. It was a pretty rough situation just because my grandma was dealing with cancer. She was suffering from breast cancer at the time, lung cancer, and then shortly, as time went on, it led to brain cancer, and we sadly lost her. So losing her kind of made us also lose our living situation as well, which I'll get into that. But going back, when we had moved back in with my grandma after my mom and my dad had separated when I was a kid, just because my dad was very abusive and he did drugs a lot. He was a heroin addict for many years, and he's clean now, but I still choose not to talk to him. I'll get into that as well. So where do I start? So growing up, my mom had met a new guy. His name was, well, actually, I'm not going to mention his name just for legal reasons. He's my little brother's dad, and they met. They were together for quite a while before they had my little brother. Together for about a year or two. My mom was kind of always on me to call him dad or see him as a dad, even though I wasn't comfortable with it. Because at the time when I was a kid, I was a daddy's girl. I always needed to be with my father. My dad was kind of like my favorite parent. I'm pretty sure every daughter is like that with their father growing up, especially when your parents are separated, which made it pretty hard for me to choose a parent to really like. So I kind of just chose my dad because I was with him all the time. But my mom's relationship kind of developed into her becoming a very, how do I say this, I'm not going to say a bad mom, but a bad person, which I knew it wasn't her fault, and I know it's not her, but I'll get into that as well. So when my mom was with the guy, I had noticed at a young age he was abusive towards my mom. I mean, they were together 24/7, like nonstop. They even worked together, same job, everything. But I noticed him treating my mom badly from the start. He yelled at her a lot, he abused her, and my mom didn't really know what a normal relationship was like because she was with my father at the time. I mean, like way before, a little bit before that, and my dad was very abusive towards her, which made it kind of made this relationship that she had with my little brother's dad normal. So she didn't think anything of it, but growing up, I knew there was something wrong because my mom changed a lot. She started to develop into substance abuse, and that was because of my grandmother who had cancer. When my mom and my little brother's dad had separated due to them arguing a lot, my mom was going through a tremendous heartbreak. She couldn't even sleep in her own bed. She was sleeping with my grandma for a couple months, and it was very hard on her. And my grandma was like, "Oh, take pills. It will make you feel better. Take this. Take pills. Come on, do it." Basically, shoving them down my mom's throat. And that's kind of where my mom started to develop a really, really bad substance abuse problem, which led to me noticing and realizing as a kid that my mom treated me bad during her substance abuse. I mean, I know it's not her fault. I mean, substance can takes control of your body, and it's not your normal self. So I understand. But um, so going back to when I was saying that my grandma had passed away, we had lost our house, we got evicted, and it was very hard on me because growing up as a kid, I was back and forth to houses, moving out almost every summer or like every year or two. And that was very hard on me because I couldn't settle in one place, just stay and be comfortable. I had to be prepared to move out of the house. And we did get evicted a ton. We got evicted a lot. And so the last time we got evicted, which is the very last time me and my mom ever got evicted from a house, we moved in with my uncle. We were there for about um 3 years. We only had lived there because we didn't have a living situation, mainly because my grandma had passed away. So it was hard for us to really live anywhere without my mom getting help with rent, because my mom was a single mom with 2 kids at the time. So it was very hard on her. Living with my uncle, it was very hard on me because my uncle was a very like an outrageous person. He would rage a lot, slam stuff, you know. It was a nonstop thing in that house, and I didn't get any privacy. So that's where a lot of my mental issues started from when I was a kid, was living with my uncle. At the time, I did have some online friends. They were kind of like an escape for me at the time because I was a kid. I didn't really have any other friends in that town because it was new to me. All the kids were rich and entitled. I would get bullied a lot. So having online friends was kind of like my escape from reality in a way while living there. Um, our friend Bella was kind of a really bad influence on us, and she would influence me to do stuff, you know, talk to guys at such a young age. And it was horrible. And I gave into it because I didn't know what I was doing. I was young. And if my friend's telling me to do something because it's cool or because I want to fit in, I was going to do it. I was up for anything to keep my friends. And it kind of escalated into me now feeling regretful of my childhood, kind of wishing that I never hung around with somebody like that, because at the time I didn't know, but I wish there was somebody there to tell me that she wasn't a good person, because it really, really messed me up in the long run, especially growing up. I kind of have a really bad reflection on men now, even my own father, but that's understandable with my dad. I mean, growing up now, I can't look at men the same. I feel uncomfortable around men because of the things she was making me do. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know what like sex meant at the time because I was so young. And she kind of put stuff in my head like, oh, this is normal, like it's fine, it's just for fun, nothing's gonna happen. But then it resulted into me getting, you know, basically assaulted online. I was being harassed by older men in their 20s and 30s. This was happening to me and my friend Alex, and we just thought it was normal. So I feel like that kind of messed up me and my friend's childhood at the time. But I finally decided to cut her off for just a little bit, and I didn't really think anything of it, because I was like, oh, she's just cut off. Like, we're not friends anymore. But then I started to realize, oh, like, she really messed me up. Like, this is bad. I need help. So, after being friends with her, it kind of resulted into me having to reach out for help because I didn't know what else to do. I was going to school counselors, telling them that I was trying to kill myself, telling them that I was um, taking pills, and I was doing it for attention just because I wanted somebody to help me. And I felt like if I was telling people that I was getting harassed by older men online, nobody was going to believe me. Nobody's going to believe an 11-year-old kid coming to an adult saying that adults are harassing them online, because it would have resulted into me getting in trouble and nobody believing me, which would hurt me the most because I didn't have a support system. I couldn't go to anybody and reach out for help. So I had to fake stuff. I turned into self-harming. There was an incident that happened. I had self-harmed and I went to the school about it because I wanted somebody to help me. And I didn't know what else to say or what else to do. So that's what I did. I cut myself for attention so somebody would help. And it resulted into the school calling 211. DCF was getting involved. My mom got involved. My uncle, who was living with us the uncle that we were living with at the time, had gotten involved, and this made him very mad. He took away every single knife in the house, and it made me feel horrible because I knew that it wasn't my fault and it was just a cry out for help, and nobody was helping me. This was just making me feel worse. And I remember before my uncle had came home, my aunt and my mom were threatening me with were telling her uncle about this, and I just remember getting petrified because I was like, oh my god, my uncle's gonna find out. I'm gonna get into a lot of trouble. And they were threatening me to send me to boot camp, and I was kind of confused. I was just like, this is my cry out for help and nobody's helping me. I want somebody to know what I'm going through online and outside of in the real world. And nobody really understood and nobody really cared, which really hurt me. But then everybody in the online friend group kind of distanced themselves or grew apart, which kind of hurt me the most because that was my escape from reality. I didn't really have any um, friends in my town because I was getting severely bullied at the time, a ton, constantly. It was really bad. I was getting called fat. I was getting called, like, I was getting made fun of for my acne at the time too, because that's when I started going through puberty and started changing a lot. And I was just getting made fun of a lot, like a whole lot. And I couldn't change it. Like, I couldn't help my weight. I tried, starving myself, throwing up all the time. But it was hard because I was so depressed. I didn't know what else to do with myself. Um, but the bullying comments did start to escalate a little bit. And this was when I was at the school for probably about a year or two. We had a school dance and everybody was having fun, afterwards. It was kind of just like a fun thing. I wasn't getting made fun of. Nobody was making fun of me until I went home and me and my friend had went on an Instagram live. She was a girl that I had gone to school with at the time. We're still pretty good friends. But two boys ended up joining the live and it was kind of just like everybody talking about the school dance, and then I had a kid bullying me for my weight, telling me that I was really big and stuff like that, and it really hurt me, and that's when I really started to self-harm even more, and I hid it this time so nobody noticed, but it really hurt me because when I was going to that school, this is when I was dealing with my grandma had just passed away, you know, this is when my grandfather started to this is when I noticed that my grandfather was a very horrible alcoholic and drug addict. Um, my mom was going through her substance abuse and stuff like that. So I didn't really have anybody, and bullying kind of made this worse. And I was like, what did I do? Why am I getting made fun of? Because all I want is friends. All I want was somebody to be there for me. And I didn't have that support system, and I didn't have people who realized that. And now that I kind of like look back at it, I'm just like, why did that ever happen to me? Because I didn't deserve it. And it kind of sucked because I was around a lot of entitled rich people, if that makes sense, nice houses, families together, stuff like that. Um, but I did have a close friend that lived up the street from me at the time. Her name is Heather. We're still very good friends. We've been best friends since fourth grade, and I would go to her house a lot to escape from everything, mainly the arguments that my family were having a lot. Um, my emotionally, mentally abusive mom. So that was her family was kind of like an escape to me, and I consider her mom as my mom in a way because if I think about it, she sort of raised me from fourth grade all the way to now. I still go over there all the time, and she calls me her other daughter. So it feels good to have another second family. Her family basically calls me their family. So it feels good to have somebody like that supports you and loves you, even though you're not blood related. Um, Shortly after we moved out of the house, we have moved into a different town, not even like 5-10 minutes away. And we've lived here for about, I want to say 4 years. Um, it was kind of a relief for me to be out of my uncle's house because moving here gave me my own private space. I had a door. I didn't have a door in my uncle's house. I was sleeping in a freaking dining room that was my bedroom. I didn't have any privacy or anything like that. So now that I live here, I have privacy. I get to take showers unlike I was able to at my uncle's house because my uncle was kind of like we want to save money, so don't use any hot water. It was a situation like that, and now I take showers all the time. Like, I'm allowed to be myself, and living at my uncle's house. Another reason why I got bullied when I was in that town was because I would go to school smelling like cigarettes because my uncle smoked in the house so much, and it really affected me because I just wanted people to know what I was going through. And that it wasn't my fault. I was a kid. I couldn't control it. I couldn't say anything. And now that I'm living in this house, there's no cigarette smokers, thank God. Um, it's just a normal house with teenage a teenage girl and her mom. And um, now that I live here, I feel like I have an escape from everything. Escape from the bullying, escape from living in a house that destroyed me my whole life and I had really bad memories at. That house kind of held the memories of me getting harassed online as a kid over a friend who forced me into a lot of bad stuff. Um, it held the memory of me gaining a lot of weight over there because I was so depressed, and I still kind of struggled with my weight to this day. The struggle of living there and having to be in a house full of smokers, and that's why I have bad lungs. I struggle with asthma due to living in a house like that. Um, it was a lot. It was a whole lot, and I'm happy that I'm out of that situation. But stuff still isn't really good with me and my mother. Um, Me and my mom kind of argue here and there. She's a user and she's still recovering. Well, trying to. It's kind of hard because my mom does work a lot and she doesn't really have any time off to go to rehab. So that's hard on her. And it's only me and my mom. My little brother doesn't live with us. He lives with his dad, not due to my mom having any substance problems, but due to an incident that had happened a while ago with my little brother and my grandfather. And his dad didn't want him around my grandpa, so he took him away a while ago. And it really kind of affected my brother now because my grandpa recently passed away from an addiction and substance abuse, which I'll get into in probably about a few minutes. So my grandpa and my brother didn't get to be as close as me and my grandpa were because of his father taking him away from our family. But that really bothers me that he would do that. Another thing was when we moved in here, it was me and my mom and her roommate at the time. Our roommate ended up moving out a year later. Certainly, I want to say right when COVID had started, and bills were very high. It was a pandemic. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't go grocery shopping. You couldn't go out anywhere. My mom couldn't do anything. So it was hard for my mom to keep up with everything. So my grandpa had ended up moving in because he got kicked out of my grandma's house for being a user. She didn't want that in her house. So it was kind of like it was brought into our home. But my mom only took him in because I was her dad and she wanted to do the best that she could for him, which I understand now that he's not alive. I would have done it too. I would have brought him into my home. Um, right as my grandpa moved in, it was kind of a shit show right from the beginning. He was he was drinking a lot. I would see my grandfather fall over in the rooms. There was an incident one day I went downstairs. My grandfather had fell back into the tub and injured his back very bad. It took down the shower curtains and everything, and he was screaming for me to help him, but I was too scared, so I ran upstairs and I had waited for my mom to come home from the store so she could help my grandpa because I was petrified. I didn't know what to do. And I kind of dealt with that for a few years, and it never got better. If anything, it got worse towards the end. But after that incident, my Aunt Patty had came back into our life. My Aunt Patty is a user and everything like that. She's a very bad alcoholic, and she, you know, really, how do I say this? Like, she kind of put a really big bad toll onto our family and made me deal with a lot growing up. There was an incident where she had came over here. It was about, I think it was the day before Thanksgiving, if I'm correct. She came over and there was something off from the start. She was very like trembling all over the place. She seemed like she was like really sick. She was sweating, so she was like, I'm just gonna take a minute to lay on your bed. And I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine. So I let her lay on my bed and I sat on the floor. And my mom had left the story and she said, make sure you keep an eye on her because something is off. I don't trust it. So my mom left. I didn't check on my aunt. I just kind of looked at her every couple of seconds to make sure she was okay. But then my mom came home and she was like, did you check on her? I was like, no. But my mom came in and she tried to wake her up and she wasn't waking up. Turns out my aunt had almost overdosed on my bed on fentanyl, and I had to witness it, and I was sitting here the whole time. almost with a lifeless body in my room. And that was very hard on me. I watched my mom carry her downstairs into the car and speed off to the hospital. And that traumatized me for the rest of my life. And I had to do various therapy sessions over it. I'm still trying to get over it now. And it's very hurtful because the uncle that I have lived with is now talking to my aunt, which is his aunt. So she's basically my great aunt. He's talking to her again, even though he knows the whole incident that happened with her. And he kind of just says, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, you're holding a grudge upon somebody that made a mistake. And I was like, I know. I get it was a mistake, but it really affected me. And it's still, it really bothers me to this day. I am scared to sleep in certain parts of my bed. So when she was laying in my bed, she was like in the middle, flat on her back. So I'm scared to lay in my bed like that. It really bothers me and it scares me a little bit. And I have flashbacks of it happening all the time, and it gets me very scared. And how do I explain it? Really affects me really bad, and I get I don't know, I get shaky and I freak out, and I'll never forgive her for what she did because she put me through so much, and I had to watch that as I want to say I was 13 or 14 at the time, so this wasn't too long ago. I had to watch that with my own two eyes and witnessed my aunt almost dying in my room. And I felt like it was my fault because I didn't check on her and I didn't make sure she was okay. But now that I'm older, I kind of realized that it wasn't my fault. I didn't know at the time what fentanyl even was, and so that really scared me. And now I'm older, 16. I kind of have my life together. I have a boyfriend now. We've been together for almost 3 years, and it's been good. I've actually being with my boyfriend is really good for me because before I got with him, I didn't really want anything to do with men, mainly because of the things that happened to me as a kid. I was scared that I was going to get, just myself into a bad situation. But turns out it went out really good. He like was like the best thing that ever happened to me, and he still is, which is really good now. Now that I'm older, I've cut all contact off with my father due to me growing up with him being abusive and threatening to kill himself over every single little minor inconvenience he had in his life or anything that I did that just pissed him off. So I don't talk to him anymore because of that. I had put a restraining order on him about 2 years ago, and that was a shit show. He got mad, broke it many times. Right as the restraining order ended and it was off everybody's name, he was like, oh, I'm sorry for everything. I'll work on myself. But then, started treating me like shit again. And that's kind of when I had a breaking point. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I don't want any contact with you. So now I have my dad cut off for good. Thank God. I haven't heard anything from him. I don't reach out to him. The last time I saw him was January. He had attended one of my dance recitals, and that was the last time I ever really hugged my dad and told him that I loved him. And it kind of hurts because I feel like me and my dad could have had a good relationship while growing up. He really mentally messed me up very badly. And it's because of him. I have PTSD. I'm diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm diagnosed with OCD, ADD, depression, anxiety, stuff like that. And it's all because of my father and what he put me through as a kid. So it hurts a lot still. I'm still trying to get over it and trying to push myself back from contacting my dad and saying, I love you and I miss you. I hope everything's okay. But I haven't done it, which is a good thing for me. I'm now in high school. I'm in a very big campus. I'm studying anatomy to become either an anesthesia tech or a gynecologist, depending on my financial situation. I might be a CNA because I'm doing a pipeline program at my school that I'm hopefully going to get accepted to be a CNA, so I don't have to go to college and pay for college and mess me up financially. So I'm doing that, which is good. And yeah, that's basically all about me and my life. It was kind of shitty, but that was it.
Okay, I have a few questions. One of them is, what did you say that you were studying?
Anatomy and physiology.
Okay, I'm putting that in my notes. Sorry.
It's a study of the human body.
Okay,
So that'll hopefully help me.
it should, I think. Okay, I have questions. Can you tell me more about like the impact that addiction had on your family? Because it seems like addiction is was like your whole childhood. Like around you, everybody was on something or on drugs and addicted to it really bad. That took a big toll on your life. Can you explain like a little bit about how it impacted you and how it affected you?
It impacted me very bad because what mainly with my mom being a substance abuse user, it affected my relationship with my mom and how I view people now. I get very I get very triggered when I see like people on the street that's like high off of heroin. Like it really genuinely bothers me. And if I'm on the city bus, I see people nodding out because they're high, and I was just like, oh, it really, really affects me really bad, and I'm traumatized from it. And growing up now, I see that, oh, I'm never going to be like that, and I have made it clear to myself and my family that I will never do that. And they're kind of pushing on me that you never know, you might slip, you could let somebody force you into taking a drug, and I'm just like, I'm not going to be like that. So it was kind of hard for me, and it's hard for me to see people like that now.
Did they ever like do any type of drugs in front of you, like around you or in front of you? Like, were they kind of careless about it, or did they try to hide it from you?
Um, my mom tried to hide it from me, but I obviously saw everything because I was in her room all the time. I was nosy, and I would go through stuff, and I would find stuff. With my dad, I never saw anything besides methadone that him and my grandma had taken. The methadone was from the methadone clinic that they had went to when they were trying to recover off of heroin, and I would see them nodding out all the time. So it was kind of obvious that they were both high all the time. So them hiding, like them being quote unquote high, didn't work, and they didn't really try to hide it. With my grandpa, he didn't hide it. He was obviously an alcoholic. We saw the alcohol bottles all the time. We, smelled the marijuana, but the marijuana never bothered me because I grew up around that. I'm in a city that you smell it all the time. People do it all the time. It doesn't bother me. It's kind of like a norm for me. Um, but yeah, drugs never really were hid from me. Well, they were hid, but I found them
So they were poorly hid.
very poorly hid, especially with my mom.
Um, would you be, if you're comfortable, explaining? I know you said you don't mind, but I still have to, make it aware. You don't have to answer. When you started self-harming and like cutting yourself for attention so that people could try to see that you needed help, what kind of led you to first start it? Like your first time ever hurting yourself? What led to it? Like what made you say, "Hey, what if I do it to myself?" Like, did you see it online? Did you hear about it? How did you really know what self-harm was at first?
Well, I knew what self harm was at first because of, you know, our, me and you, we had an online mutual friend named Becca. She kind of talked about self harm all the time and about harming herself. That's kind of where I found out about it. And her bringing all the guys into my life at such a young age, of with them mentally and abusing me and, just sexually abusing me, kind of led for me to ask for help because nobody believed that I was getting sexually harassed online by 30, 20-year-old men.
Do you think Becca kind of influenced self-harm? Did you guys have any like private conversations or conversations in general where she kind of hinted or straight up told you, "Hey, you should try it out, see if it works for you"? Was she like kind of condoning the fact of it? Because it seems like she was kind of like trying to put an anchor out there, like self-harm is amazing. It's something you should do. Like she was trying to downplay it as it's this great coping mechanism. Is that something that she was trying to do?
Yes, she would talk about in group chats and even in private messages, like, oh, I've been cutting myself because of this, that. Obviously, I'm not going to put her business out there because it's not my business. But she was basically telling me that self harm helped her out, gave her the help she needed. And she said that to me and my friends multiple times. So I was like, you know what? If I self harm, it'll show people that I need help. And obviously, it's okay if she's doing it. And mind you, I was young, so I didn't know.
Do you think that you self-harming made things worse when people found
Um,
out?
the only thing that made it worse was them kind of holding it over my head, like, and being like, "We're sending you to boot camp. You did this, and now we have to hide our knives in the house, and now we have to keep a close eye on you. We have to check through your phone." So that's the only thing it really changed.
So they made you feel guilty and kind of help and the help that you needed.
Um, yeah,
Do you think that the reason why they weren't trying to help you is because they don't know how to help themselves? Because they were, addicted and probably using and on drugs at the time they found out. Do you think that kind of enhanced their incapability of trying to help you out?
yes, I believe so. But since my like, ugh, how to explain this? Since my uncle was so against it, he was like mad about it, mad at me because he didn't want to look bad.
Do you think your uncle cared more about his self-image than about your actual mental health or personal health in that matter?
Yes, I honestly think so, even to this day.
Is your uncle still in your life or no?
Yeah, he is, but we don't talk.
Would you like to try to talk to him one of these days and explain, or do you not even want to bother with him anymore because of how shitty he made you feel?
I mean, a part of me does want to talk to him because he's my family, and with my mom's family, don't really have anybody over here. And he did give us the summer to live for free. We were living there for free for years, so I do have to give that to him. He did a lot. Him and my aunt bought me and myself, we bought myself food because my mom didn't really buy us anything because she was so bad in her addiction at the time and didn't wasn't in the right and wasn't really in the right mindset. So he did help me out a lot, and I kind of don't want to talk to him, but I kind of do because over the years, ever since we moved out, my uncle developed into an alcoholic mainly because of my grandfather passing away. That had a really big impact on him, and my grandmother passing away.
And this is on your mother's side, so that would be their parents, right?
Yep, my mom and my uncle share the same mom, but my uncle has a different dad, but he always saw my grandfather as a father to him because my grandfather raised him his whole life.
Speaking about your grandfather, how do you think your relationship with your grandfather is? Like, how is your relationship with your grandfather? And did he do anything personally to you to affect your life other than being, addicted?
So before he passed away, we did have a really good relationship. We were very close. I called him Num Num because when I was younger, he always used to bring me donuts every morning, every Sunday morning from a bakery down here called Baker's Dozen. And I'd go and I'd stand up in my playpen and go Num Num. And that's where kind of the name started. And I was very close with him. I would go fishing with him all the time. He would take me every single weekend to go over his house with my grandmother, and we were very close. The only thing that kind of impacted me with him was his addiction, but I know it wasn't him because my grandfather was never like that ever. And when he got sober, he did call me a lot, and I would get messages saying that, thank you for being the only person there for me during my addiction. I had a hard time, and you being so young, you took that, really big impact, and you try to help me even though I was going through a lot. And now that he's passed away, I kind of wish that I could hear those words again and just relive my whole life again. Even if he is in his addiction, it doesn't matter. I will always miss him, and I don't care if he's here a drug addict, an alcoholic, or if he's here sober. I just wish he was here because he was a really good guy.
Do you think that addiction took a big toll in your life as well as his?
Um, it took a really big toll on my life because I grew up around it, and it was scary because I haven't seen any of my real family members. I've only seen them high. Like, that's not the real them. So I haven't really seen that, and you know, I don't
Still to
know.
this day?
What was that?
Still to this day, you haven't seen not one of your family members sober for at least a week straight?
Only my mom, but she kind of detoxes herself and gets very sick. So
Mm.
that's the only time I've seen my mom sober, but not in a good way because she gets really sick because she's trying to lean off of stuff, but then she starts taking it again. So I don't really get to see my mom happy and sober.
How do you cope with addiction taking control of your life? Did you find any outlooks of it, like how to escape from it?
I kind of just stopped paying attention to it and I stopped saying my feelings about it because it didn't matter. If I was feeling a certain way, they didn't care. They wouldn't try to up and go to rehab and help me in the long run. Um, so I kind of cope with staying to myself.
Okay. Um, I you didn't really specify what happened with your grandfather, but what happened with your grandfather and your brother that made your brother's father take him out of your life, basically?
So, this was when my grandfather was an alcoholic, going back into his addiction. Um, they were driving back because they just had picked up a fireplace, and my grandfather was gonna go set it up, and I'm pretty sure, not 100% at my grandma's house. Ooh, sorry, excuse me. And my little brother was in the back seat, and my grandfather was so drunk that he had swerved into a ditch, and this resulted in my brother getting many bruises, very a lot of blood on his face, a tooth missing, a tooth chipped. His tooth is actually still chipped to this day, and it really made my brother's dad mad because my grandfather was an alcoholic, and we didn't know. We didn't know he had slipped back into his addiction. We didn't know that him crashing into that ditch was because he was, drunk. And me and my mom had literally went out and searched every single town for wherever they were. We couldn't find them. My grandfather had ended up finding them in a ditch, and they were trying to crawl out and walk home. But my brother was so weak and had so many bruises and was so like, what's the word? He was so messed up. Like he literally looked like a walking zombie. And that night we had to take my little brother to the hospital because we wanted to get him checked to make sure everything's okay. We were in there for about, oh my gosh, from afternoon to midnight. And I remember sitting there and I heard my little brother's dad saying, this is the last of it. I'm taking your kid away from you. Your kid's never going to see your father again. And he called the police on my grandfather for the whole car crash thing. And they had ended up going to court. And the court said, he's not allowed to see my little brother for, I want to say 7 months. So my little brother's dad took him into his custody. And his father's a piece of shit because reflecting back to when we were at the hospital, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go home. I'm really tired. Mind you, I was a kid. I was like probably 13 when this happened. And he was like, you don't give a shit about your brother. So he's a piece of shit. And I will forever hate him.
How old was your brother when that happened?
I'm not sure. I want to say uh, 6 or 7.
So he was still a baby, and I'm assuming the car crash affected not just your immediate family, but people around.
I'm not really sure because um I didn't really pay attention to it. I once it happened and it was over with, I was like, my brother's fine, everything's fine, I don't really care.
Hmm. When they kind of found out about everything, right, and your brother left the house, what exactly happened after? What was your state of mind in that time? What was your mother's state of mind? Because that's her son. Like, what was the situation that happened and occurred afterwards?
My mom was like frantic all over the place looking for her kid. She was in a really bad state of mind. She was very, very anxious. I was like freaking out, confused. I was like, wait, what's going on? Why are we speeding on the road? Like, why are we rushing out of the house right now? What's going on? So it was kind of like a hectic thing for everybody, even including my grandfather, not my grandfather, my grandmother, which is my grandfather's girlfriend, but I consider her grandma and her son. That was a crazy thing to deal with. And afterwards, after everything had happened, you know, my little brother was taken away and placed with his dad, and he doesn't live with us now, which kind of sucks because I grew up without my little brother. I don't really see him a lot, which results into us not having a good relationship.
Do you think your brother wants to see you, but his father doesn't allow him to, and vice versa? Would you like to see your brother?
I want to see my brother and work on stuff, but his father moved them 30 minutes away. So, I mean, not 30 minutes away, like almost an hour away. So, I don't really get to see him as much as I would like to. He does come almost every weekend, but when he comes here, I'm usually busy. Because I have work and everything, and my boyfriend's usually here a lot. So, I don't really get to have one-on-one time with my brother. And since my brother's a little older now, he really only cares about video games and being on the phone with his friends and not nothing less than hanging out with me.
Do you think you would be able to bond with him now, or do you think there's no point in like trying because he feels very closed off with his siblings?
I feel like there's no trying now because his dad took that away from us. We weren't able to have a sister and brother relationship.
Um, Going back to grooming that you brought up before with that girl, can you share your experiences of being groomed online and when it kind of started? Like, do you know how old you were or what age? And how did you manage like doing that grooming stuff and feeling disgusted by it, but still doing it just so that you don't lose your friend?
So with that girl Bella, she her quote unquote real name is Becca, but she prefers to be called Bella because an online friend who changed her name. So she kind of followed that path. So I don't really know what to call her, but I met her over oh god, I don't even want to say because it's so embarrassing. We had a whole little fangirl group of a group named Why Don't We? And we kind of all connected through there. And at first things were going good until she started going on Omegle and, you know, like looking at guys' genitals and showing off her body. And she was like, do it. It's fun. Do it. So I went on Omegle and I didn't do anything. Like, mainly, personally, I didn't show anything. I just went on there with her, like, over FaceTime. And she was like, oh, let's use Kick. Let's use Kick. So we went on Kick with me, Bella, Alex, and men were starting to groom us on there. And it was disgusting. And now that I look back at it, I'm just like, I wish I was old enough to realize that I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have done that, and I shouldn't have been hanging around with that girl. And I kind of wish that myself now could go back in time and tell my younger self, this isn't okay, and this is going to affect you in the long run, and it's going to affect the way you look at men, and it's going to affect the way that you look at men in your family, and it really has affected the way I look at men in my family. And now I think that every guy's like a rapist, every guy's like gonna sexually harass me, every guy has a bad intention because I was put through such a bad situation with her.
Do you to people who don't know what Omegle or Omegle is, can you kind of explain what that, if it's a website or app, what it is and how you even came across it, or do you know how Becca came across it?
Omegle is a website where you can go online and meet people from all over the world. It's kind of like a public, like, nationwide um FaceTime call. It's basically for people all over the world.
So like an old day Facebook or Instagram except video.
Yep. And I'm not sure how she found it because she just brought it up and I didn't really ask any questions about it. It's kind of just thrown at me.
What was your first experience with it? Like the first ever time you went on Omegle or even Kick, how did that transpire? Like what events played out for you to even feel like forced to do it? What were the words that she said, if you can remember, or her tone or anything like that?
I remember saying that I didn't want to do it, and she was like, if you don't do it, like, I'm not going to be your friend, and I'm going to tell Alex that you're talking shit about her, and I'm going to tell Alex that you've been having intercourse with people when I literally was 11 years old and didn't even have sex yet. I didn't even know what sex was.
So she threatened you with stuff you weren't even knowledgeable about at the time so that she could get over on you?
Correct.
The reason why I'm asking these questions is because, I am the person who went through it as well with Bella, but I have a whole different story and I was told a whole bunch of different things during the time of Omegle and everything. I took the fall for her multiple times. And since we're going on the podcast with this, I do want it to be known that there are girls or even boys, people in general out there who will strive and like have fun just making people's life shitty and get no backlash for it. So that's why I'm asking like the questions about her, even if I already know the answer, because these people may not.
Correct.
Um, when was the first time you guys stopped being friends? And if you don't mind me asking, why?
The first time, I don't remember exactly when we stopped being friends, but I know it was over an altercation because I chose my friend Alex over Bella. And she got mad at that, and she was like threatening me and, stop being my friend. So I was like, whatever.
Um, how have the challenges that you experienced, with grooming and trying to understand your online safety now, like what do you do now about that? Like because you stated that with men you're very afraid. You have this like bad battery in your back where you assume that all men are the same. They're like these old men online who are probably in their 50s, 60s now, who were talking to underage girls, aware that they're 10, 11, 12 years old, and forcing them to show their body and telling them that they had your address. Because I remember off the podcast you've stated that before, where they would threaten you, say they have your address, and they'll tell your parents if you didn't do certain things, or they
Yep.
would come to your house and threaten to rape you, or horrible, even worse shit like that, like murder you.
Yeah, it
um
happened to both of us.
yeah, how did that kind of affect your safety in real life? Like, were you paranoid? And even online safety now too, like, what is your thought process when you see or meet anybody online? Is that your instant reaction, like, oh, they're an old man portraying a person?
Um, Now that I'm older and I'm obviously more internet cautious, I don't follow random people on Instagram, and the people that I only talk to online are you, literally only you, and that's because we've known each other for years. And now that like I look back on it, I'm like, wow, these men probably had families and kids and even grandchildren that like didn't even know about was what was happening. And now that I see such young kids online now with our new generation, it like affects me really bad because I was like, these kids are gonna get hell because when we were 11, 12 years old back in 2015, 2016, we were getting groomed by old men, sending their penises pictures to us, telling us to write their names on our boobs. And I was just like, this is gonna happen to like kids nowadays, and it's gonna get even worse because there are more child pornography cases than ever right now because kids are sending nudes at 11, 12 years old to old men, forcing them to. And they think it's okay because the adults, the parents in our generation now is like, they don't care. They're just like, you know what, leave me alone, go on online, have fun with your friends. And my little brother is 10 years old talking to 17, 8-year-old boys online playing video games. And I'm just like, that's going to either lead into something really, really bad or it's just nothing's going to happen. And I'm scared and my mom doesn't see anything wrong with it. And I'm just like, I was a kid dealing with that stuff. I was getting groomed by old men online. How do you not see anything wrong with this?
Do you think that grooming is something that should be brought up way more and explained about, and how, even if it's online, it's a thing? Or do you feel like it depends on the person and the situation? Because a lot of people think that grooming is just a made up thing that children or people say to not get caught doing what they're actually doing. But in reality, they don't know the full story. And I know that you stated that you were forced to do it, and I'm assuming it was multiple times because you said over the years. So, how long was this girl making you go online on Kick and Omegle? Was it on any other websites? Did you have to do video calls or voice calls? And you mentioned writing on your boobs and genitals. Can you explain and elaborate a little bit more so that when if people listen to this, they understand what to look out for with children, or even like 17-year-olds who get groomed, because it's possible for older kids our age to get groomed, any age really. Can you kind of explain what they should look out for and what you've been through and you've been forced to do by older men and younger parties of your own friends who kind of force you to do these horrid acts?
So this whole Omegle old men grooming thing kind of was going on for 3 years, 3 years straight. Well, on and off because we were friends on and off. And now that I look back at it, I'm just like, I wish I could spread awareness to more kids to be careful out there online because a lot of bad stuff does happen. Somebody can come to your house, rape you, sexually assault you, anything. It could happen to anybody of any age. And I don't think people realize that. And signs to look out for are, if somebody's like, "Oh, where do you live? Like, where are you from? Like, you want to link up? Like, please don't ever give them your address. So probably the worst thing you could ever do." Um, Another thing to look out for is definitely who you become friends with online. Definitely look out for online friends. If you can really trust them, great. If you've been close with them for years, great. But if this is an online friend that you just met and they're already asking, like, what state are you from? Like, we want to meet up. Like, be careful because those people are just probably catfishes online or they're looking to do something bad to you. And it can happen to anybody.
Okay, so continuing with the Omegle thing, I just Googled it to get the exact date it was made. Omegle was made in 2009, and these events took place from what year to what year?
I want to say 2016 to 2020.
So pretty recent, I would say. It was almost 3, 4 years ago. That's still very new and probably still traumatizing, especially if it was continuous. Um, so Omega was made in 2009 and this happened in 2016. Do you think that throughout the years, it at first it was supposed to be a friendly site, like other apps that have come out recently, like before House Party was taken down, House Party, or this Monkey app that came out where you could video call random people from around the world. Do you think that at first it was supposed to be very friendly, but it ended up turning into pedophiles and people who just want to get a nut off? Do you think that they joined that for the fun of it?
I think that first Omegle I heard that it was made for a good cause. It was for people to meet each other, like kind of like a MySpace thing that our parents had when they were our age. It was kind of something like that, and then it escalated to something it wasn't supposed to be. Old men old women wanted to take advantage of it because they knew younger kids were probably starting to get a little new to the audience because I knew Omegle became popular, I want to say around 2014, 2015. That's when you would see on like Musically and YouTube, people going on YouTube doing it. So I think of a lot of pedophilia people use that as like to their advantage. Like, oh yep, like there's an app out there, there's a website out there I can use to go and take advantage of little kids and go, you know, talk to any kid I want and I won't get in trouble because this website isn't illegal. I can't get caught. Like there's no way of me getting caught. In reality, you can get caught. Omegle actually does monitor a lot of stuff and you can get banned off of it. I'm not sure about the legal stuff. I've never dealt with that. So that's kind of out of my question, but like, as you were saying, House Party, I feel like that was made for more of like friend groups. And I didn't really deal with anything on House Party, so I don't really have anything to say about that. And the Monkey app, it's kind of like literally just like Omegle, just like it, just like it, except it's a smaller audience and kind of sometimes a younger audience. Because I remember going on it as a kid when it had first came out, and now there's apps like Yubo and where you can like meet people from like your state and like hook up with them. It's weird, and I know a lot of people take advantage of that app to get little girls to hook up with them because a lot of older men hook up with girls because they're easier to get to and they're easier to manipulate.
Did you ever get caught doing what you were doing by your parents or your friends or counselors or anything like that?
I never got caught ever because I was so scared of getting caught by my mom because I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know like how to bring it up to somebody like, oh, I don't like I need to stop, like I need to get away from this girl. But I literally couldn't because if I tried to get away from her, she would ruin every single friendship I had with all of my friends.
Did she know other people that you were friends with? Is she someone that you were afraid about with the whole grooming situation? Is that why you didn't stop the first month and you let it carry on for about, I think you said 3 years, if I'm correct?
Yep. Um she only knew a couple of my friends, like online wise, wasn't anything really serious, but she was like, if you don't do this stuff with me, we're gonna have a problem. Like, I'm literally gonna tell Alex that you're like talking shit about her, which is not true. I'm gonna tell Alex that you have plans to go to wherever you live and fight her, and which I never had any intention of doing. And I was like, one, I don't want to ruin any of my close friendships, and two, I don't want anybody to feel like that I want to go fight them, because I wasn't a kid like that ever. I was a really good kid. I never got into any physical altercations with people because I wasn't like that. So I don't know why she would try to put that in my mouth, but I didn't want anybody to look at me like a person that just wanted to fight people and wanted violence all the time, because I really wasn't.
Is before we get off of kind of like the grooming subject, do you have anything else you would like to say about the whole situation?
Um, if you're online and you're a kid aging any age, like under 18, be careful, because there are people out there who will take advantage of you, who will do anything in their power to get with you. Like, be careful, because there are men out there who just go online to take advantage of younger kids and manipulate them into doing whatever they want.
Um, Going back to kind of like the self-harm stuff again, when did you realize that self-harm wasn't exactly a good coping mechanism?
I realized that when my family was actually 100% on sending me off to boarding school because they didn't want to deal with me.
Did you ever quit self-harming?
I didn't quit. I more like hit it, but still did it. But then I stopped once I got older and I became more mature and I started to realize everything.
Do you know the age where you kind of decided, like, okay, this is not right. I did this out of spite to get attention, and now it became a habit?
Yes, my help, my cry out for help because I was being groomed online. Me self-harming was my cry out for help, and it wasn't working. Nobody ever believed me. So at the age of 14, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stop. Nobody's ever going to believe me. And still to this day, nobody believes me.
Have those challenges with like online safety, which led to self-harm, kind of like affect you and like just hurt you in the long run, even now?
Yes, it did really affect me. Now I'm like so overprotective over my little siblings and what they do online. I mean, my little sister has a gaming platform called Roblox where you can play with online people, and I literally have all of her account login info because I'm so scared that this may happen to her, because she's already starting to go through a lot that I was going through. The bullying at school, the name calling and the body shaming. Like, I don't want my sister to go through what I went through. So me now, I'm very cautious of my little siblings, and I'm like a parent when it comes to that kind of stuff. And for myself, I honestly don't need to be cautious about it anymore because I'm older now. If a guy tries to groom me and be like, get the fuck out of here, don't text me, don't call me, and I just easily block them, and I don't have that girl in my life to influence me to go do bad stuff like that.
When did you finally like call it quits with the girl? When did you finally kick her out of your life for good?
About 2 years ago.
Um, with the bullying, when did that start? We never really got into that. Do you know when you getting bullied kind of started and how it affected you?
It started as soon as I went to my new school when I was living with my uncle. I was fourth grade. At the time, I was a little skinny. I do have pictures of me in fourth grade. I was a little skinny. And once I started to deal with everything at home, that's when I started to gain a lot of weight, like a lot. And I still deal with my weight to this day. But I don't get bullied for it, which is a good thing. But in middle school, I definitely did deal with people, like going on Instagram lives, calling me big, going on Instagram, commenting stuff about me. Um, People at my school saying it to my face, saying it behind my back, and they would make fun of me because I smelled like cigarette smoke. That was because my uncle smoked in the house, and I couldn't do anything about it. I remember this one incident where we had to bring in a little paper bag. It was for a project, and we put in stuff that meant the most to us in the paper bag. Like, if you like bacon, baking you would put a whisk. If you have a dog, you'd put a picture of your dog or like your dog's collar in there. Um, if you like to draw, you'd put a pencil. So I had made the bag and I put my stuff in it, and one of my bags got passed to a kid, which I know now. I go to school with this person, but I do not talk to him. Um, he smelt the bag and it had cigarette smoke on it because of my uncle and me leaving it out in the open. And he was like, "Oh, let me guess who this is." And he looked at me and I was like, I lost it. And I wanted to break down, but I knew I couldn't. And I was really embarrassed because I was dealing with a situation that wasn't even under my control. And before I left the house, I drowned my bag in perfume because I was so scared that somebody was going to say something. And the perfume ended up wearing off and they smelt it and I got made fun of it for months.
How long did the bullying go on for?
As soon as I left that school in 7th grade.
With bullying, were you kind of forced to bully anyone else?
I never bullied anybody because I knew what I was going through and I didn't know what other kids were going through. So I never bullied anybody except you because Bella was forcing me to.
Fun, right?
She did it to both of us, and it sucks that we had to grow up dealing with that situation so young.
So you said that your weight went up and down. Would you say that you were kind of binge eating to try to get rid of what was going on in your household, to try to ignore it?
I was binge eating due to everything going on in my life and everything going on at school.
And then would you say you started to develop anorexia instead?
No, it was more of I gained weight. I never was anorexic ever. I only tried to make myself throw up. Um, I more like threw up because I was overfeeding myself. I never really starved myself, only a few times, like once or twice, and I couldn't do it because I got so sick. I mean, I got sick if I didn't eat, and I got sick if I overate. So it was kind of like that back and forth. And I did see a doctor about it, and I have my problems fixed now. I'm okay now. And I overfed myself to the point where I could like not even eat anymore because I was so sad. And food was my copiness, and honestly, it still is. And I don't care about my weight anymore because plus size girls are so like in now. We're like a fashion trend, and I love it.
Do you think that your eating habits gotten better and more maintained than when you were younger?
No, they're still the same, but I don't eat as much, and I don't overfeed myself. I don't get sick when I eat. I don't starve myself. Nothing like that
I
ever.
only have a couple more questions. Jesus Christ. Okay, in dealing with trauma, online grooming, self-harm, eating disorders, bullying, and just everything in general with addiction, did you have any resources or support networks that were helpful towards you?
My support networks. I was very much a YouTube kid, so that was my kind of like escape from reality and everything.
What type of YouTubers did you watch that kind of helped you cope?
Um, well, very controversial now, but still trying to make a comeback. Shane Dawson. I watched Shane Dawson a lot because he was a person who kind of made it clear online that what he was going through with like eating disorders, like mental health, stuff like that. So it was kind of like a comfort to watch somebody like that. So I watched Shane Dawson a lot. Um, I was very into slime as a kid, so I watched a lot of Karina Garcia. Um, I watched a lot of Albert's stuff. He was a Roblox YouTuber, and I watched that because I liked video games. And video games were escape from everything going on. So those were the YouTubers I watched.
Did you have any games that you played that kind of helped you in life?
Just Roblox because I played it with my friends.
Going back to support networks, did you have any like groups or handlings that you kind of went to when you were younger or even now that kind of help you?
I not when I was younger, but towards the age of 15, I started going to a lot of Al-Anon, Alateen groups to help me cope with me losing my grandfather at the time. So
Hmm.
I was going to those, and now I've created a group for people going through my situation, that had went through my situation, so I can help them, because there's not any Teen Al-Anon groups really around anymore. So I'm here to help kids my age get into get a better life.
Are you comfortable with talking about your dad in any type of situation?
Yeah, I'm fine with anything.
Okay, the last few questions that I have for your dad. One of them was you said that your dad did a lot of horrible things and he was addicted, but you never really elaborated on that. Can you kind of explain, like, when you were living with him, what happened? What did he do that kind of made you despise him, but also tolerate him because he's your father?
A part of me despised him because he called me a fat pig a lot, and that really got to me because I was already dealing with people bullying me for my weight when I was living at my uncle's house. That made me hate him even more because I felt like this is just like gonna continue. Like the people at school are bullying me, and now it's my father, and he did that for many years, and it really hurt me. And um, but I kind of learned how to tolerate all of his bullshit growing up because I was with him for so long over the summer, and I was like, this is just a normal, people probably go through this with their fathers too. And I was around online friends who, not going to mention names, like that went through stuff with their fathers. So I was like, oh, it's just normal. Like, it's not just me. Like, it's fine. So that's kind of what made me tolerate it. And my dad was a very manipulating person. He would tell me, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill myself. If you don't stay here, I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to hang myself. And he kind of manipulated me into tolerating him. So it was kind of him that made me tolerate him, if that makes sense.
Do you know, I know your parents were split up, which is why you had to do the back and forth. Were your parents kind of like, did they tolerate each other or were they always arguing?
Oh, they were always arguing till this day. But I mean, there was times where they would be able to tolerate each other. It was mainly my dad that was just an asshole that kind of made it hard for him and my mom to communicate.
I know you stated that they were broken up and obviously, as you just said, their relationship was not that all that good. But you also stated he was an addict and he did heroin. Did he do any other drugs in front of you or around you? And did he bring anybody over that would kind of give you an eerie feeling or anything like that?
Um, I don't know if he did anything else. Not completely quite sure. But when I was living with my dad, usually for half of the time, he would bring his friends into the house, and it was kind of obvious that they were drug addicts. Everybody knows. So I saw that growing up, and I had a feeling. I was just like, whatever. Like, I'm like, I can't stop on nothing because if I say something, I'm gonna get in trouble. And it was always, oh, go in the room. Like, I'll be out in a minute, or something like that. And there was a situation that actually happened recently, a couple months ago. Um, my dad was living in Enfield, and he came all the way, Enfield, Connecticut, came all the way over to where I live, which is about an hour away. And he picked me up, and we went um to a town 30 minutes away. He was like, oh, we're gonna go see your aunt and stuff like that. So I was like under the impression that we were going to this town to go see my aunt. Turns out he was like, oh, I don't want to see her anymore. And he went to his friend James, and you can include this name because I'm gonna get into him in a second.
Okay.
Um, he, I think my dad was like, oh, I owe him money, and I was just thinking, he's gonna tell me to stay in the car. He's gonna park away from the house, and he did that. He told me to stay in the car, park too far away from the house, and stuff like that. And after hanging out with him, he was like, oh, I'll see you again. Like, next time I see you, we're gonna make sure to go practice some driving stuff because I'm hopefully gonna get my permit soon. So I was like, okay, yay! Like, you're gonna come back. We're gonna go like do driving. Like, I'm excited. A couple weeks later, or about a week later, he got really drunk, went to a motel room, and he was with that guy named James. And I don't think I have the voice message anymore, but if I do, I will find it and I will send it to you.
Mm.
He made a voice message saying, So I called him and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you have people calling my phone saying that you are drunk in a motel room, freaking out, threatening people, telling people you're going to go kill their ex-boyfriends and stuff. And he didn't answer my phone. Well, he did answer the phone call, listened to me, hung it up, left me a voicemail, and he was saying a whole bunch of weird stuff. I don't really remember what he said, but in one of the voice messages, he yells, "James, wake the fuck up. We gotta go." Meaning that he was going to come either over to my house and do something, or he was going to go to his ex-girlfriend's house at the time and do something to her. And mind you, this James guy kind of influenced my dad in a way to do everything, because my dad was dealing with a lot, and James was like, "Oh, take a drink, you'll feel fine. Take a pill, you'll feel fine." Mind you, my dad was a recovering addict until that situation happened.
Hey, Alex here. Okay, I am taking a break in this podcast to show you a voice message that she actually just sent about her dad. Before she reads these messages, this is the voice message that she is talking about, but she could not find it first, but she just sent it to me. So if you are on video, if you are watching the video version of this podcast, please be warned, there will also be screenshots while you are listening to the voice message. Okay, here it is, guys.
You little shit, you. You're going to call your father and disrespect me for the sake of Melissa? Are you serious? Well, you know what's going to happen to her tonight? You don't even know. I'm going to make her father lick his own butthole. And it's going to be funny to watch. It's going to be on America's funniest home videos. You know what's going to happen there? That's the toughest white kid I ever seen. I'll fucking make Tori lick my asshole. Bitch. Jerry, get the fuck up. Yo, get up. Jerry, get up. Let's go, we're taking a ride. Go. Huh? No, I need you to take my car. Let's go south. You heard?
So I give you full permission to blast his name out there, and I don't care if he hears this, because if he does, I want him to know how much he fucked up my relationship with my father.
Okay, I definitely will put his name in, especially since you asked. Do you think that James was his dealer at the time?
Oh,
as well as his friend?
do you mean like right now, like recently, or before?
In general, as just a drug dealer, do you think that he's the one who supplies?
I'm pretty sure he's the one who supplies now, but I'm not sure who supplied back then.
Okay. Why did you or your family issue a restraining order on your father?
Because my father was threatening to kill my boyfriend. He was threatening to call DCF on me and my mom because I refused to talk to him. He refused to listen to me about what I had to say to him. And he also was like, "I'm going to call DCF and tell them your grandfather's an alcoholic so you get taken away from that home."
So this was when your grandfather was still alive?
Yes. And my dad always treated him like shit. And actually, no, he didn't treat him like shit before he died. So another recent thing that happened, me and my dad kind of were going back and forth on leaving notes to each other on Cash App because that motherfucker wanted to be an asshole and wanted to blog me and everything. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to request some money to his little ass on Cash App. So I did. And I was asking him for money because I had to take the bus. And I told him, I have a job interview. The least you could do is give me $3.50 to buy a bus pass to go over there. And mind you, the $30.50 bus pass is for all day. So I would have had it away there and back home. Gave me the money. He was like, "If you're not going to talk to me, don't request money from me." And I was like, "You're my father. The least you can do is request money." And I actually have every single screenshot of what my father said to me about my grandfather. I actually will pull those up right now and read them all out to you in order. So I had called him via phone, and we were talking. I was just actually trying to catch up with my father. And as soon as he answered the phone, "Your mom's a piece of shit. Your grandfather's an alcoholic. All your fucking grandfather did was mooch off of me and my father. Mind you, my grandfather is very rich. So people always used to go for him for financial support. And he gave the money to them. So, but he was like, your fucking grandfather used to get money off of my father. And that's when I lost it. I was like, you're not going to sit here and talk shit about my dead grandfather. So, a little bit after that, this was September 20th at 4:15 p.m. I requested him $1, he requested me money. I'm sorry, hold on. I'm trying to view all because there's a lot.
You're good.
So I requested $350 September 5th at 12:10. For a job interview, I need to take the bus. Another one September 6th at 4:11. Mind you, he sent me all of this money. I said $4 short for the bus. I did the math wrong. He sent me 200, I'm not 200, I fucking wish, $2.83 for take your bus and stop, call me or never again. He requested me $666 September 19th. I requested him $1. I said, why would I call you when you talk shit about my dead grandfather? He requests $1 from me, says, then don't ask me for money again. And that was September 21st at 7:01 a.m.
So very recent.
Yep, and he was basically saying, you know what? If you are not going to call me because I talk shit about your dead grandfather, I don't want nothing to do with you.
If you were to call him now or in the future, anytime recent or soon, what do you think he would say?
Talk shit about me. Talk shit about my mom.
And then after, do you think he would ask for you to come back and forgive him, or do you think he would just be like, "Fuck you, you're done, you're a piece of shit"?
Both.
Before what recently transpired, was he trying to contact you?
It was more like I was contacting him because his deadbeat ass couldn't even reach out to me.
When you last seen him at the dance recital, did it kind of like make you miss him, or did it give you any trauma of like what could have been?
It made me miss him a lot because at the dance recital, he seemed like he was in a good state of mind, but he was in public, so I mean, he kind of had no choice but to act good. But it did make me miss my dad because he ended up buying me roses after I got off the stage. He took pictures with me in my dance recital costume, and I was like, wow, my dad like actually wants pictures of us. He actually wants something to do with me. Come to find out, still a piece of shit. It didn't change after that dance recital. After that dance recital, stuff only got worse.
Okay, so do you think that now that you're not in contact with him and everything, things will get better, or do you think it's just gonna stay the same if you guys were to ever get in contact again?
I think now that I've had my distance from my father, things are going to get better. But if I talk to him, things are only going to get worse. So I'm going to decide to just keep him out of my life because I don't want anything to do with him.
Why did you choose to be, this is coming off of the topic of your dad. Why did you choose to be a CNA, and why did you choose to study anatomy and physiology?
So I decided to take anatomy and physiology and become a CNA because when I was younger, I grew up watching my grandmother struggle with cancer, and we sadly had no choice. They forced us to put um like my grandmother in a nursing home, and since I was in and out of the nursing home all the time, as well as visiting my uncle who was in the nursing home at the time and my grandmother, so I kind of watched old people like struggle, and I never seen any of the families go in and talk to them or any families go to visit them, and I was in there almost every single day, and it really like made me teary-eyed because I was like, how are you going to put somebody in a nursing home but not make the effort to go see them? And I know a lot of old people deal with, they're losing their mind, like they're forgetting everything, and because they're older and they don't know what's going on. And I was like, you know what? If I become a CNA, I could possibly make somebody's life better, and I could possibly, make an old lady feel like I'm her family. So I decided to do that because I want to help people in need and people that really do want it.
If you had one more chance to talk to your grandfather or grandmother, even though they both passed away, what would you say to them both, or one of them?
To my grandmother, don't force my grandfather and my mother into taking pills, because that's what made them addicted. I actually blame everything that I've lost on her. I lost my mom's relationship because of her. Lost my grandfather because of her. So I would just give a big fuck you to her. And my grandfather, I would probably tell him, go to rehab, stay in rehab, stay clean, don't slip up, because you're gonna lose your life.
If you could talk to your dad and have him sit down, and whether he's sober or on drugs, would you tell him how you feel? And if yes, what would you tell him?
I wouldn't tell him anything. I honestly probably think I'd fucking kill my father. I really do. I think I'd actually kill my dad.
Is it because of all the trauma he put you through that he has you in the state of mind where you don't want to even see him again?
Yep.
With your mother, because I know your current living situation, you are with your mother, correct?
Mhm.
Even though it's an on and off type of relationship with your mom, do you think that it's gotten better or worse throughout the years?
Kind of in between.
Excuse me. Can you elaborate on that?
Like, stuff has gotten better, but stuff has gotten worse, if that makes sense. So nothing has really changed, but only a little bit.
Would you be able to ever forgive your mother for being addicted because it's not her fault? Or do you blame her for continuing the addiction after trying to detox and get sober?
A part of me, I don't think I'll ever forgive my mom, because she did put me through a lot throughout the years. You know, I struggled a lot, and I don't think I'd ever be able to forgive her, because she knows what she's doing, and she fully wants to go to rehab, but she hasn't made the choice to get up and go. So I don't think I'd be able to. I don't.
Do you think that when you move out in the next 2-3 years, you'll be able to still contact your family, or do you think you would probably have to cut them all off if they're all still dealing with addiction?
I think I'd cut them off for about a year, focus on myself, see how everybody's doing. If they're still the same, I'm going to choose to not talk to them.
Have you ever been addicted to anything? I actually never asked that. Have you ever done drugs or been addicted because of what you've been through, or no?
When I was about 14 or 13, I smoked marijuana with my friends a lot. When my grandfather moved into the house and he had alcohol in the house, I would take some of his alcohol and drink it. And I was addicted to self-harming for many years.
Are you still dealing with self-harm, or are you still clean?
I'm not dealing with that stuff anymore. I refuse to drink and I refuse to smoke. And I haven't done it in a while.
What is your plan for the next upcoming years?
Get out of my house, get a good career, and graduate high school with all of my credits.
Is there anything else that you have planned, like moving situations, jobs, interviews, anything like that?
Hopefully I get to do the whole school to work program kind of thing. So I can become a CNA and stuff like that. And in the near future, I see myself hopefully possibly moving out of state after I graduate. I'm not sure yet.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about or say before we end the interview?
Bye, podcast.
All right, guys. So that's it for today's podcast. I do want to state real quick that the people mentioned in this podcast are real life people. Please do not go sending hate. This is just for audience purposes and for the people to tell their stories. Usually, we do not allow real names to be named or people to be named, but she was very, very strong about having this person named because of the horrid acts they did. We cannot deny that type of service to certain people depending on the situation. So that is the only reason we allowed names to be named this podcast. Please be aware of our rules that we do not allow that. So if anybody wants to hop on, usually we do not allow people to name names unless the person is deceased or they got legal permission to do so. Hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. I will see you guys in the next one. We post every Fridays and Sundays, so stay tuned, and I'll see you guys in a couple of days. Goodbye.